This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to ageekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Dane Espegard on the show. He's the division manager at Vector Marketing, the author of a book called The Dream Machine, and the founder of The Dream's Vault. So we're going to talk today about leadership. He's had over 2 decades helping professionals with networking, communications, and leadership skills, which are all the things that we're interested in here at ageekleader.com. So with all that being said, Dane, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into marketing, leadership, and these kind of things, and where does dreams come into play with all this?
For sure. Yeah. So my professional background, I got started as a student working with Vector Marketing and Cutco Cutlery, and they work with a ton of students every single year, and so I started selling knives. That was my intro into business and direct sales while I was a college student at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I was exposed to just the whole field of personal growth while I was working with Cutco, and I loved it. That gave me an opportunity to kind of see challenge and adversity and rejection and in a different light that I was really excited about. So I did that for 4 years, and then when I graduated from college, I decided to stay with Cutco and advanced through that organization. And I still run a 6-state area for Cutco as a division manager, but I've had the opportunity to help, every year. For instance, when we open new locations, I'll be involved with the startup phase of anywhere from 10 to 20 new locations every year. And so, the idea of culture building was right at the center of what I've been doing for the last 15 years and what I still do today.
Awesome. And just to be frank, I have a pair of Cutco knives that I've had for a long time, but they're great. So they're fantastic. But tell me a little bit about where the ideas of dreams come into play.
So for me personally, I had the pleasure of hearing Matthew Kelly at a Cutco conference. They paid to bring him in, and he wrote a book on dreams and culture, and that was back in 2007 when I heard him. And so that made a mark on me personally. And I took some of that to my team and started implementing some of it. And then in 2012, I had the opportunity to move again to take my business from Omaha, Nebraska to Minneapolis. And so during that process, I was kind of going through the thought exercise of if I was only able to start one more team for the duration of my career, what would I want the culture to feel like? And that's where I went back to, I wanted a culture that's going to be centered around helping people achieve their dreams. And so I, went through all the stuff that I could find on culture and dreams and started to kind of create what we have today. And now in our organization, it's really the signature thing within the DNA of our organization. And we've been growing really consistently. I do believe because of that, it really helped with our retention.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you talk about someone's dreams and their aspirations and things like that, are you talking about like in work, outside of work, or a combination of the two? And kind of how does that fit into when you're trying to lead someone or grow them as an individual and an employee?
Yeah, so the focus is actually more out of work than it is in work. We'll take people through a dream, we call it dream storming exercise, where we take them through 9 different categories. And work is one of the 9. But even within that, we talk about most people are going to have multiple careers. And so it's very much not limited to what we do in the workplace. And what I have found is that, in sales, most people don't come to our company and most companies and say, man, I found that I've been looking for a sales, especially knives. Nobody comes to us and says, I've been looking for a cutlery job for my life, and this is what I want to do. And so for us, we've had to, find ways to really engage people and try and get them excited about what they're doing, even if this isn't the industry that they thought out. And what we found is that it's not about the prize within work, if you will, or the benchmark within work, but if the things that they're doing in work are moving them forward on a life basis, they're going to be excited and bring extra energy to that. And so we've kind of taken the idea of, life isn't supposed to be about work. Work is supposed to be the vehicle for us to live the life of our dreams. And so if we can keep people moving towards personal initiatives, they're probably also bringing extra energy to the workplace.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I feel like the whole adage of where, work and home life is separated is kind of, an older way of thinking about things. And I think today we realize that, like, we work to live, we don't live to work,
Mm-hmm.
and like for me, I try to take, and I encourage my employees to take as much vacation as possible. Don't spend your time just working. There's a life outside of work, and you should be here just to, afford that life that you want to have. And realize that people, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly it, which is, finding purpose in work to be able to live such an exciting life. They're going to be able to bring that energy home and back to work again.
Yeah, it's something about like not burning out, having that ability to refresh. And you mentioned purpose. Let's talk a little bit about purpose, because I've been having conversations with people on my team about like purpose. When you work for something that you don't necessarily like, it's a job, right? And sometimes it's hard to find purpose in whatever your little minor aspect of that company or that piece is, but you can think about like the greater purpose. And, there are things that leaders can do to, give someone a little bit more purpose with their job. But also what you're talking about right there is just kind of pointing them to like, you're doing a good job here, affords you the ability to be a good father, or to have time at home, to take your kids on trips, to give you purpose somewhere else. And they can work together that way.
Yeah. And I also think that just engaging in the conversation with team members about the personal stuff helps them to understand, like, look, you're not just a cog in the wheel. You're not just whatever your title is. Like, we're recognizing you, that you're a person, you've got a family, you got all these things. And so to do this that we're talking about in terms of like a culture of dreams, the leaders also need to be vulnerable to be able to share and say, hey, here's some of the stuff that we're working on as a family. Here's, we're taking this next trip and it's a dream of ours because, fill in the blank, right? One of our kids is interested in, my wife and our eldest are super into horses. And so, this last January, February, we went on a couple of week RV trip to Ocala, Florida. And, if somebody just says, oh, you're going to Florida, it's like, well, yes, but we're going to pursue a dream for my wife and one of my daughters. And so there's more meaning to it. When I'm sharing that with people in work, it's also much easier for them to engage with me because they're understanding more about me than just, oh, he's going on a trip. And so I think that element of us talking about 9 different categories and talking to the whole person, it's natural within our work environment that people are just trying to become the best version of themselves because we're talking about all the categories from, personal relationships to mental and physical health to spirituality to, travel, you name it. So many different parts of life.
So what is it you say to, a lot of our listeners, let's just say, are, earlier in their careers, they're interested in, maybe they're a team lead now, they're interested in moving into management or becoming a director or, hopefully a CIO or CTO someday or something to that realm. What would you say to them if they're on a team where their leader, their boss, has one of that mentality where he doesn't like to share, he doesn't want to open up in those ways? How do you encourage that and kind of, help adopt the culture of your organization when you're not the supreme authority over that?
Yeah, my biggest tip to anybody is just be the example, right? Be the change that we wish to see. And so I think that there's a line that you don't want to be the person that's just venting all your personal stuff at work. But I think if somebody's listening to your podcast, they're obviously, they're in the right direction. And so if somebody were wondering that, I'd say, hey, it's totally okay to open the door and share some things about yourself first. And that probably is going to make other people more feeling more welcome to do the same, right? To start sharing about, something they're excited about. Again, we don't. One of the things that I'm focused on is making sure that we have a positive work environment. And so, most of the sharing that's happening are wins and things people are excited about, or challenges with solutions towards things in their life. And then they also know, though, hey, if they're having a personal challenge, they're welcome to share that. And our team has a phenomenal culture of sharing those things individually because they know we care. And I think that's the part, which if they know we care, we're not just going to look at them as a number in a production. We're going to look at them as a real human that's on the team.
Yeah, I think that's key right there. Is to show people and to validate that you actually care about the person. And sometimes it can be as easy as just well, I think the main thing to do is just to be honest with them. I think honesty shows that you care a lot more than anything else. It's even like sometimes having that conversation with someone where it says, I'm just not feeling motivated here, and being able to honestly tell them, I think it's time for you to go somewhere else. I mean, we love you here, you're great, but your skill set has really outgrown the role that you're in, and we don't have a position for you, but we will help you. You'll be happier if you move on because you're getting bored here. You're more talented than this role requires.
And I love that, John, because the other part I think is so often people are nervous about their people leaving. And so then they grip so tightly. And I've taken the other approach, which part of this is the nature of the beast of being in direct sales, and turnover is high. But I finally came to terms with, look, everybody's going to leave at some point. And some point could be, look, I've been at Cutco still for 23 years. And so I'm going to leave at some point, right? I wouldn't have thought it was going to be this long, but everybody is temporary. And so what I have found is if I am continually serving that person, they're most likely going to stay longer than they would have otherwise. And I relate that always to, a healthy marriage. Anybody who has a super healthy marriage is going to tell you that they have some element of, I'm still dating my spouse, right? The challenge that people get into is once they get into marriage, they stop dating, and then things get stale and stagnant because you just assume like, oh, they're here forever. So, we take it for granted. So as a leader in organizations, I think it's so important that we continue to, metaphorically date. That's probably not a good terminology here for work teams, but that we continue to court our team members and treat them as though they're in their first couple of months on the job, and we really want them to have their best experience. And if we do that, I think we'll be shocked at how low our turnover is. Not just low turnover, but high engagement of those individuals.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think, again, it just goes back to, doing what you would want someone to do for you, I guess you would say, and realizing like, I had someone, a mentor, kind of a leader tell me one day, I was talking about turnover because I worked for, I've been in software for a long time, and I had a team that had really high turnover. And I was, asking myself, so like, how do you as a leader, deal with the fact that people leave? Even if it's the right thing for them to leave, it's still hard. How do you deal with that? And he said, you just got to realize that some people are like your foundation, they're your rocks, and they're going to be there no matter what. They're the part of the house that's always going to be there. But there's other folks that come in and they're the scaffolding. They're extraordinarily important to build that house and to build that building. But the building cannot be built until the scaffolding is removed, until they leave. And you just realize that people have different purposes, and understand what that purpose is for your team going forward, and be grateful for them being there at that time, and let them know that, they're going to leave.
I like that.
So tell me a little bit about why you decided to write the book, The Dream Machine.
Well, I thought that obviously I believe wholeheartedly in it, and what I was able to do with the dreams culture and our specific organization was very different than what had been done in Vector. And we I don't want to say we solved the turnover issue, but due to us having very long-standing individuals on our team, we've been able to grow consistently every year, and our performance is at levels that haven't really been seen before. And then through a friend one of my closest friends, Justin, went through the process of writing a book back in 2020. And I got to watch that process. And right as he was close to publishing, I said, man, this is so cool. And he goes, you should write a book. And I said, wow, that sounds great, but maybe someday when I'm older. and have, more time or whatever. And then he basically just walked me through the process, and he called it out right away. I said, well, I don't know what I read a book on. He said, what are you talking about? You write it on the dreams. And that's when it became a real idea. I went home, told my wife, and she's like 100%. So that's how that's where the idea came from. And the process was a ton of fun. And, through anything, once we start understanding that we're going to teach something, it forces us to simplify and really, sometimes even create the system that we've been doing, but maybe hadn't been doing in a replicatable way. And so the whole book writing process was great for even my organization, because it forced me to even get better at what I've been doing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I teach part time at Winthrop University. One of the things that I've learned is when you have to teach something, you learn it so much better.
Yeah.
Even if it's just the fact that there's nuances that you haven't thought about how to explain it, and then when you go through the process of how to communicate the thing that you kind of know and feel inside, brings it out to a level that's just so much greater understanding of that concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't recognize. I knew that from teaching, because I teach sales and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a total another level when I went through the book writing process. So it was very neat.
So tell me a little bit about, like, some of the strategies within that book, and some of the strategies when it comes to building a culture, like you're talking about.
Yeah, so we do. It all starts with we call it a dreams workshop, and sometimes that's just a couple hour meeting. Sometimes it's a whole retreat. I actually, this next week, I have my annual dreams retreat for my team. But what we do during that process is we go through a brainstorming process where we take people through 9 categories and help them build as big of a list as possible. And the idea is that, at the end of that, they should have 200, 300 things down that would bring them energy and joy if at some point in their life they were able to experience it. So it's a really loose list. It's not a commitment of I'm doing all these things. It's just a big list, a big menu, if you will, for motivation. And then from that, we do some sharing, and that's always a lot of fun, because people on the team get to know each other. Some dream stealing where we add it to your list, and then the last process is people will sit down, they'll look at their list, and they'll find 5 to 10 that are potential for the next 6 to 12 months. And then we give them the space to actually do some research and put some things in motion. And so by the time we're done with that retreat or that workshop, they have some things happening already that is going to move them in the direction of knocking down their first couple of dreams. And what we find is after people do a few of those, it's really contagious, where they start to call it live life by design. And they're like, oh, I guess, there's all these things that I've thought would be cool, but I just got stuck in the mud doing the same thing every day. Right. And that's what happens to a lot of us, is that life, we start to be reactive instead of proactive. And so that's how it started. And then for years, I would just track this in Google Sheets. So for me, as the leader of the organization, if I could have visibility to my team members' dreams lists, well, then I could use it for a lot of different things, for incentives and thank yous and gifts. And so I just had everybody's in Google Sheets, which was kind of a mess, if you will. So a couple of years ago, I partnered with a buddy that is way more tech savvy than I, and he created the Dreams Vault, and we've been using that ever since, which is great. So we've got quite a few companies using that, and it's basically just a real fancy. It's much more than Google Sheets, but the idea is that I have visibility. I've got 60 people on my team. I have visibility to every single one of their dreams lists. So do they. So they can go in and they can set goals and targets and take notes. And when they hit them, they can put a photo in there. And then on my side, there's a section where I can go in and look. We have all hands on deck meeting quarterly. And every one of those, I can just go into the system and it'll show me who's accomplished a dream within the last couple of months. And so I can use that to, what we appreciates. And so at the meeting, I can start off by recognizing our core value of dreams and say, hey, before we get into the business stuff, I just want to recognize these, 8 people for accomplishing a dream within the last couple of months. So that's been really helpful. My Christmas shopping, my appreciation gifts. I no longer just buy the generic stuff. I go right on the dreams list. I buy people dreams off their list, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Um, do you incorporate this in your home life, like with your children or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. So my wife and I do this annually where we'll go through, and we typically will meet somewhere in November, December, and we do like a little year in review. And then we plan the next year. But the planning is around, hey, these are the dreams that I have that that I'd like to accomplish this next year. She has her own. And then there's always some crossover, but that's typically how we'll put the year together, is some combination of us pursuing our dreams. My kids are my oldest is about to turn 9, and then 7 and 2. And so we're getting to the little bit more fun age when it comes to the dreams, but they also have their own dreams lists. Right now it consists mostly of some travel stuff and owning, every pet you could think of. But we started doing once a year, we switch, and I'll take one, she takes another, and we take them on to a destination that's on their dreams list. And, right now it's like San Diego Zoo, and my eldest daughter wants to go to indoor water park. And so we're getting to do those things. But what I love is that they're hearing the language of dreams, and they're also seeing us model what I think all parents want for their kids, which is pursuing their dreams. Right. And what we're trying to model for them is that dreams don't have to be some massive, large thing. It can literally just be setting a goal, working towards it, and achieving it.
How do you encourage I know we're supposed to be talking about work stuff, but I'm curious of just like how do you, and maybe this also ties into employees, because I found so many things, after I was a manager and before I had kids, and then after having kids, I kind of realized like a lot of what I do at work, works for my kids, and a lot of the things that work for my kids also work for my employees. And I was just curious, like, is there a way that you can incorporate this along with some type of encouragement to encourage, work ethic? Like, you have to work for these dreams, and kind of show your children that these things don't just come because mommy and daddy have jobs, but you actually have to, put in some effort here too. How do you do that? Because you want to translate that into your employees too.
For sure. And so, I use the example of some travel ones, which, for a kid, that's a little bit more like, we're just going to take you there. But the other categories, a really common one in our work team is health. And so, the example on that is obviously there's hey, I want to gain 10 pounds of muscle, or I want to run this race, or I want to increase my flexibility, or I want to, those ones are, I think, the fastest kind of straight line, if you will, to, hey, I've got to take these actions that are maybe different than before to be able to get this result. So we have a lot of those. I like to co-fund those for my team members. And at home with our kids, we have similar ones where it's, hey, what's a dream that you have? Oh, I want to, again, my eldest is into horses. So she has some goals that she has with horses that require her to practice, to train, to work with a trainer. So she's getting that. She's getting to see what that looks like. My wife models it with Duolingo, right? She's got some items on her dreams list of, some streaks of Duolingo. And so my girls, they also have some Duolingo ones. So I think they get to see some of it. It is more common that there's work involved in the dreams than a trip, right? So the trip ones were maybe the ones that don't fit that bill quite as much.
Yeah, yeah, I like that too. I like the Duolingo, the street thing. My daughter does that too. She's obsessed with making sure she hits her streaks.
That's great.
Yeah, so I think that's fantastic. What are some ways that you can encourage, or people can? You mentioned, you have your list. You talked. Is that what the Dreams Vault is? Is that like the tool?
Yep. So the Dreams Vault is what keeps it. So all for my team, for instance, and this is for any work team, basically there's an account that the company has set up on a, monthly program. And then all the individual employees have access to create their list in there, log in whenever they want. It's free to the individual user. So that's where we keep our Dreams Vault. I have an account for our family. And so we're able to load those things up. Our girls, because of their ages, they've got some in notebooks. But the goal is to get them all in there so that we can access it from wherever.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And you mentioned celebrations. Can you walk me through a little bit about like the process of the celebrations that you do? You mentioned just talking about it at the meetings, but how do you do it at home?
It's based. I mean, anytime the kind of the thing that I would relate it to is anytime an individual, like let's say a family, when you go on a trip, the trip itself isn't just the exciting part. It's like the second you decide you're doing it, now the anticipation is exciting, the planning is exciting, the lead up as you're getting packed and doing all that, like it brings so much life to the days even leading up to the experience. Then there's the experience, and then we try and capture it with a photo or something else. And so I'm using a trip as an example, but if it's a health one, there's usually training, so in the dreams vault, when somebody is choosing to pursue a dream, there's something that they check in there. It's kind of like a toggle button that says activate dream, which means, okay, I'm going to start doing this one. Well, the main leadership team, they have visibility of that, so they can see when hey, John on my team just activated a dream. Let me go look. Oh, it's a marathon, which means he's probably training for a marathon. So I would check in, and the system updates the managers and the leaders every Monday. So I would get the email Monday morning that says these people on your team activated a dream. These people accomplished a dream. So I would probably check in with you, and I'd say, John, I saw you activated doing a marathon. Did you figure out which one? And you're like, yeah, I found this one, and it's in Charlotte. It's 5 months from now. It's whatever, right? And then I'll say, that's awesome. What are you doing for training? And I would just engage with you about the dream, right? So are you training? Are you doing it by yourself? What's the plan? Sometimes in the health related ones, I'll try and meet them halfway. Mm-hmm. So it would be before. So if I knew that you were entertaining the idea of a marathon, I might say, hey, I think that's awesome. And John, what excites me most about you doing that is the different version of you that we're going to get at work. And what I mean by that is you're going to be on fire because you're going to be training. You're going to be a healthiest version of you. I'm fired up for that. I would love to pitch in, right? So I don't know how much it is, but I'm more than happy to split the entrance fee with you for that marathon. And that's my way of kind of being along for the ride with you as you go through that. Would that be okay? Nobody says no to that. Oh, I'd love that. Okay, that's awesome. And if anybody knows how much a marathon costs, a couple $100. So as the employer, I'm pitching in $100, but there's way more impact than $100 that now I'm, involved in this journey with you, even though it's just going to be me checking in and celebrating with you along the way. And it's a little extra joyful accountability.
Yeah. When you said go in with, I thought you meant like you would run half of it with them or something.
I have run a marathon, and so I could cross it off my list, but I don't and would not be offering to hop in.
Yeah. I've done that too, and that was back when I was younger and had healthier knees. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what are some other challenges that people run into when they're trying to develop a culture of positivity and encouragement within their team?
I think it's remembering to address the person first before the worker. And it's so natural when we live in this chaotic life, especially the workplace, where we have deadlines, we have production numbers, we have benchmarks, we have all these metrics that we need to be tracking and hitting, that it is really easy then to just look across the room or the office and, fire off something that is very transactional and not speaking to the person. And so I think the most difficult thing is remembering, if you want to shift this to be a culture of best version individuals, you need to talk to the individual first. And when we do that, the numbers, like, there's a place for that conversation, and it can happen. And what I have found is, as I add this equity to my relationships within the workplace, it actually allows us to go faster. But sometimes we need to move a little slower at first to develop that strength within the relationship before we can move really fast.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think a lot of people try to jump in quickly and don't realize the value of, slow and steady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also think the mistake with this specifically, when I've had people that are, I'm going to do this in my workplace, but what they don't understand is it can't start as an add-on. And what I mean by that is, let's say somebody has an hour-long staff meeting. They can't just then all of a sudden talk about dreams for 5 minutes at the end and be like, okay, we're doing it. What they really need is some sort of designated time that is only about rolling this out. And they can do that in a 2-hour, 3-hour, we've done in person, virtual. In the book that I wrote is meant for somebody to be able to get it and do it all on their own, not to need me to hire me. Some people do, but the idea with the book was any leader could take that and say, okay, now I know how to do this. And if they start with that 2 to 3 hour workshop, now they can add on 5 minutes, 10 minutes, wherever they want, because that initial, the movement started from that initial 2-hour meeting.
Yeah. When you talk about thinking about people first, in Agile, we call that people over process. And that's kind of the way we try to always encourage the fact that people come first, that there could have a policy or a process in place, but realize that there's a person behind that, and how that person is interacting is super important. And I love the way, you encourage that when it comes to building your team and making sure that they're in there. And there's another phrase that, as you were talking about that, it popped in my head, about easing into things is in a book that I've been reading, the Terminalist books, and in there, the Navy SEAList in there always talks about slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And realizing that it may seem slow to slowly build something up, but that's a smooth transition, and that smooth is going to make things work a whole lot better in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because once that culture is in place, it's like workplace issues just aren't as big of an issue anymore, right? So you're not spending time putting out all the fires that maybe you've done in the past when you have healthy culture at work.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. What are we missing? What are some other pieces that young leaders or people that are moving up in their career and are interested in really building that fantastic team? Because we all know that having a great team is one of the keys to success and happiness at work. So what are we missing about what they need to do?
Well, I think what people can often miss, and I have been, since I launched the book and we've had the SaaS product that's out there, the Dreams Vault, I've engaged with quite a few leaders that want to change their culture, but they just want it to change. They're not willing to change themselves. And that's a big challenge then. And so what I always tell people, when I see this work, it works best when the actual leader themselves is on board to live this, not just to preach it, but to live it. And it's a lot easier for me to lead a culture of dreams when I'm doing it at home, and then I'm just bringing it up at the workplace. Like, oh, we're going on this trip, we're doing this. And one of the things that I think is so freeing about this is, and I don't know if everybody can relate to this that's listening, but for me, I grew up in a sales organization, and I wanted to, when I decided to stay with the company post college, it wasn't necessarily, the company had a lot to do with it, but what I was pursuing was what I saw other people living. Like, I remember seeing people and saying, I want their life. Like, they look like they're loving life. They've got a lot of success. It seems like they're living to the fullest. And then what happened is I reached some new levels in the business and got some promotions and had new finances. And all of a sudden, what I found myself doing was, as I had this availability to travel more and live a more exceptional life, I started actually not talking about it. And why I wasn't talking about it is because I knew the people that were on my team were in a different situation. So I was like, well, I don't want to be bragging or gloating about this, and I don't know that feels right. But what I indirectly was doing was I was no longer shining the light on the opportunity and the ability to advance, because I was nervous about how they were going to view my situation. And when I started bringing dreams into it, it actually gave me permission to be authentic and actually be, in the workplace who I was at home, and talk about an exceptional life that I was living in a way that people wouldn't look at it as bragging, but they'd say, and he actually wants that for me. He's trying to help me move forward in that. So when I'd travel, I wouldn't just say I'm out of office. I'd say, hey guys, I'm going on a dream trip. My wife and I are going to blank. And people would celebrate that, and they'd want to pick up the slack because they know that, hey, when they have a dream trip or they have whatever else, Dane's going to support me in that as well, because that's just what we do around here. And so I became a better leader when I had the kind of a permission, if you will, from having the dream culture. It allowed me to share and be more authentic at work. And I think that's one of the things that can stop a leader from attracting the right talent is when they're living inauthentically, right? When they're not being themselves.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think authenticity, means so much when it comes to, leadership and being, you can talk, say all the right words, but if you're not doing the right thing, you're not doing it. And they know what, if you're doing things, differently at home than you are at work and you're not, people can just tell. They can tell the energy that you bring in, and people want to be around that authentic leader, that they see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I agree with you 100%. I think authenticity is extremely important, and it's really hard when you're new. When you're a new leader and you don't have a lot of experience. Sometimes it can be difficult to have the courage to be authentic because you are inexperienced and you need to like express that and be honest about it. But you don't want to come off as not being able to do the job, so it gets kind of difficult.
Yeah, but I think, the authenticity, what's so great about it too, is it also gives, it also creates a culture along with all the stuff we're talking about, a culture of grace, right? Where people they're more forgiving of their leaders' mistakes when they're wearing it authentically to say, yeah, I made a mistake there. This is new to me. I'm excited to learn, but if I could have that back, I would. And, when the leader's extending that grace to other people the same way, it's like, it's such a healthy culture that can move fast because they don't get stuck in the mud on the simple things and stuff, that drama that can stop most teams.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think when having that grace, and extending the grace too, it goes both ways. So I think that's super important as well. So yeah, that's fantastic. Dane, it's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate having you on and talking about this, and hopefully our leaders are learning a lot about it as well. How can people connect with you online if they have questions or if they want to learn more about the Dream Vault or your book, The Dream Machine?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can go to thedreamsvault.com, and there's some information on there. They could also just go to my website, which is daneespegard.com. And those would probably be easiest. I'm on all the social medias as well, so people can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn, and I'm pretty active on them. So feel free to reach out on any of those platforms.
Awesome. Again, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I feel like I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners have as well.
Well, happy to share, and I love having any conversations about dreams. So thanks for inviting me on, John. It's been a pleasure.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.